November 8th, 1973. Muhammad Ali walked into St. Mary's Children's Hospital in Miami, expecting a routine charity visit. What he discovered in room 302 would shatter his heart, change his life forever, and prove that sometimes the greatest battles are fought not with fists, but with love. Ali had just finished his controversial victory over Rudy Lubbers and was riding high on his comeback tour. At 31, he was sharp, confident, and hungry to reclaim his heavyweight crown. The hospital visit was supposed to be a quick photo opportunity, shake some hands, sign some autographs, and leave. But as Ali moved through the pediatric cancer ward, something stopped him like a punch to the gut. Through a partially open door, he glimpsed a small figure hunched over a notebook, furiously scribbling despite the IV tubes running from his skeleton-thin arms like lifelines to hope itself. 12-year-old Tommy was writing what he called his Ali book, a handwritten collection of every Muhammad Ali fight, quote, and newspaper clipping he could remember. His bald head, ravaged by chemotherapy, gleamed under the harsh hospital lights as he worked with desperate concentration. The boy didn't notice the massive figure filling his doorway. He was too absorbed in his writing, occasionally stopping to shadowbox weakly from his bed, mimicking Ali's famous footwork. "Float like a butterfly, sting like a bee," Tommy whispered to himself, his voice barely audible. Ali stood frozen, watching this tiny warrior fight his own battle with the same determination Ali brought to every ring. Something about Tommy's fierce concentration, his refusal to let cancer stop him from pursuing his passion, struck Ali like a physical blow. "What are you working on there, champ?" Ali asked softly. Tommy's head snapped up, his eyes widening in disbelief. The notebook slipped from his hands, scattering pages across the bed. For a moment he couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, couldn't process that his hero was standing in his hospital room. "Mr. Ali?" Tommy's voice cracked. "Is it really you?" Ali stepped into the room, his famous swagger replaced by gentle reverence. "Yeah, it's me. But I think I should be asking for your autograph. Anyone who can write a whole book about boxing while fighting cancer is the real champion here." Tommy's eyes filled with tears, not from sadness, but from pure, overwhelming joy. For 6 months, through endless chemo sessions, painful procedures, and sleepless nights, he'd dreamed of meeting Muhammad Ali. Now here he was, calling Tommy a champion. Ali sat on the edge of the bed and picked up Tommy's notebook. Page after page of careful handwriting detailed Ali's career, his fights, his quotes, his philosophy. The writing grew shakier toward the end as Tommy's condition worsened, but his dedication never wavered. "This is incredible work," Ali said, genuinely amazed. "You know more about my career than I do. How long have you been working on this?" "Since I got sick," Tommy whispered. 6 months. When I feel bad from the medicine, I write about your fights. It makes me feel strong." Ali's throat tightened. This brave kid had been using Ali's career as medicine, as inspiration to keep fighting when his own body was failing him. It was the most beautiful tribute Ali had ever received. "Tell me about your favorite fight," Ali said. Tommy's face lit up despite his exhaustion. "The Foreman fight. Everyone said you were too old, too slow. But you showed them. You proved that being smart beats being strong. You made me believe that even when everyone thinks you can't win, you can still find a way." Ali felt something break inside his chest. Here was this dying child finding hope in Ali's victories, drawing strength from Ali's comebacks. It was overwhelming and humbling and heartbreaking all at once. "Tommy, can I tell you something?" Ali leaned closer. "You're braver than I ever was. In the ring, I knew I could win. I was strong, fast, skilled. But you? You're fighting something I could never beat. Cancer is the toughest opponent there is, and you're still here, still fighting, still dreaming. That makes you the real champion." Tommy shook his head weakly. "I'm not brave. I'm scared all the time. The doctors don't think I'm going to win this fight." Allie looked around the room, taking in the reality of Tommy's situation. The medical equipment, the sparse furnishings, the absence of the comfortable amenities most kids took for granted. Through the thin walls, he could hear Tommy's parents in the hallway, their voices strained with worry and exhaustion. "Mrs. Patterson, we need to discuss payment for Tommy's treatment," a voice was saying. "The insurance has reached its limit, and the experimental therapy costs—" Allie heard Tommy's mother start to cry quietly. "We've sold everything. Our house, my wedding ring, even Tommy's father's tools from his construction business. I work 3 cleaning jobs now, but it's still not enough. The experimental therapy costs more than we made in 5 years, and insurance says Tommy's case is too advanced. I don't know what else to do." Through the doorway, Allie could see Tommy's father leaning against the wall, his calloused hands covering his face. This man had probably built houses, fixed roofs, worked with those hands to provide for his family. Now he was powerless against an enemy he couldn't fight with strength or skill. "Sir, I understand this is heartbreaking," the doctor continued gently, "but without immediate payment for the next phase of treatment, we'll have to transfer Tommy to palliative care. I wish there were another way." The silence that followed was deafening. Allie could feel Tommy tense beside him, pretending to sleep but obviously listening to every word about his own death sentence. That's when Allie understood the full scope of Tommy's fight. This brave kid wasn't just battling cancer. He was battling it without the resources that money could buy. His parents were bankrupting themselves trying to save their son, and still it might not be enough. Allie made a decision that would define the next chapter of his life. "Tommy," he said quietly, "what if I told you that champions take care of each other? What if I told you that the greatest victory isn't winning alone, but making sure your teammates win too?" Tommy looked confused but hopeful. "I'm going to talk to your doctors," Allie continued, "and your parents, and we're going to make sure you get every treatment, every chance, every opportunity to beat this thing. Because that's what champions do, we fight together." For the next 3 months, Muhammad Ali became a regular presence at St. Mary's Children's Hospital, not for photo ops or publicity, but for Tommy. He arranged for the best specialists, the most advanced treatments, and made sure Tommy's family never worried about money again. But more importantly, Ali gave Tommy something no amount of money could buy: hope, dignity, and the knowledge that he mattered to his hero. Ali would arrive unannounced, usually in the evening when the hospital was quiet. He'd slip past the nurse's station with a bag of Tommy's favorite snacks, chocolate pudding cups that Tommy could barely keep down but still craved. He'd make his way to room 302, where Tommy would be waiting, his notebook ready with new questions about boxing, life, and courage. "Mr. Ali," Tommy said one December evening, his voice weaker than before. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Anything, champ." "When you lost to Frazier, how did you get back up? I mean, inside. How did you find the strength to believe in yourself again when everyone said you were finished?" Ali settled deeper into the uncomfortable hospital chair. Outside, snow was beginning to fall against the window. "You know what kept me going? It was knowing that giving up would let down everyone who believed in me. Kids like you who saw something in me worth cheering for." Tommy nodded slowly. "I think about giving up sometimes. When the pain gets really bad, or when I hear Mom crying in the bathroom because she thinks I can't hear. But then I remember what you said about champions fighting together, and I try to be strong for them." "Tommy," Ali said softly, "you don't have to be strong every minute. Even champions need to rest, need to cry, need to be scared. That doesn't make you weak, that makes you human." "Tell me about being scared," Tommy asked one night in January. Ali settled into the chair beside Tommy's bed. Every fighter gets scared. Before every big fight, my hands shake. My stomach churns. But you know what I learned? Courage isn't about not being scared. Courage is being scared and doing it anyway. I'm really scared, Tommy admitted. The new treatment isn't working like they hoped. Allie took Tommy's hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines. Then you're being really courageous. Every day you wake up and keep fighting, that's courage. Every time you smile at your parents so they won't worry, that's courage. Every page you write in that notebook, that's courage. Will you remember me when I'm gone? Tommy asked, his voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of a dying child's deepest fear. The question hit Ali like a heavyweight's punch. Tommy, listen to me. You're not going anywhere. And even if the worst happens, I will never forget you. You've taught me more about being a champion than any fight ever did. On February 14th, 1974, Tommy lost his final battle with cancer. Ali was holding his hand when he passed, whispering stories about floating like butterflies and stinging like bees until Tommy's breathing finally stilled and his brave heart stopped beating forever. The night before, Tommy had been unusually alert. Mr. Ali, he had whispered, I finished something for you. With trembling hands, he reached under his pillow and pulled out a small, wrapped package. Inside was a hand-drawn picture of Ali in the ring, but instead of boxing gloves, Ali was wearing angel wings. It's you, Tommy explained, his voice barely audible. But you're my guardian angel. Will you keep being my champion even when I can't cheer for you anymore? Ali's eyes filled with tears as he held the precious drawing. Tommy, you're going to keep being my champion too. Every time I step in that ring, I'm going to carry your courage with me. Tommy smiled, the first real smile Ali had seen in weeks. Promise me you'll win the title back. Promise me you'll show everyone that comeback kids are the strongest fighters of all. I promise, champ. I promise. Those were the last words they exchanged before Tommy slipped into his final sleep, holding Ali's hand with the last of his strength. At Tommy's funeral 3 days later, Muhammad Ali did something that shocked everyone who knew him. The most famous athlete in the world, a man who commanded respect and reverence wherever he went, quietly took his place as one of Tommy's pallbearers. Ali had insisted on it personally. Tommy carried my dreams and my stories in his notebook, he told Tommy's parents with deep emotion. It's only right that I help carry him to his final rest. As Ali helped lift Tommy's small casket, he seemed completely focused on the brave boy he'd grown to love like a son. At the graveside, Ali spoke not as a celebrity or a champion, but as a friend who'd been forever changed. Tommy taught me that being the greatest isn't about how many fights you win, Ali said, his voice thick with emotion. It's about how much heart you show when you're losing. Tommy had more heart in his 12 years than most people have in a lifetime. Ali paused, looking at the small crowd gathered around Tommy's grave. Tommy's parents, his few friends from school, some hospital staff who'd grown to love the brave boy. It was a small audience, but their grief was immense. Tommy made me promise something before he died, Ali continued. He made me promise that I'd never forget what real courage looks like. He made me promise that when I got back in the ring, I'd remember that the toughest fights aren't always against other boxers. Ali reached into his pocket and pulled out Tommy's notebook. the one filled with months of careful research and boundless admiration. This notebook is going to travel with me to every fight from now on. Tommy's words, his courage, his belief in never giving up, that's going to be in my corner every time I step through the ropes. True to his word, Ali carried Tommy's notebook with him for the rest of his career. Before the thriller in Manila, before the third fight with Frazier, before his final fights against Holmes and Berbick, before every major moment, Ali would read Tommy's words about courage, determination, and finding strength when everything seems hopeless. In quiet locker room moments, Ali would trace his finger over Tommy's careful handwriting and whisper, "This one's for you, champ." Years later, when reporters asked Ali about his greatest victories, he would often talk about his fights with Frazier and Foreman. But those closest to him knew that his real victory happened in a children's hospital room, where a dying boy taught a champion what greatness truly meant. The Tommy Memorial Fund, established by Ali in 1974, has provided treatment for thousands of children fighting cancer. The fund's motto, taken directly from Tommy's notebook, reads, "Real champions fight together." When Muhammad Ali died in 2016, Tommy's notebook was found among his most treasured possessions. On the final page, in Ali's handwriting, was a note dated February 14th, 1974. "Tommy, you were my greatest teacher. Thank you for showing me that the heart of a champion comes in all sizes. You will never be forgotten." At Ali's funeral, Tommy's now elderly parents were given seats of honor. In their hands, they carried the same notebook their son had filled with love and admiration 43 years earlier. The story of Muhammad Ali and Tommy reminds us that our greatest victories happen not when the world is watching, but in quiet moments where brave children fight battles that humble us all. Tommy never saw Ali win another championship, but he gave Ali something more valuable than any belt. The understanding that true greatness isn't about what you achieve, but what you sacrifice for others. Sometimes the most important thing a champion can do is recognize another champion, even when they're fighting a losing battle. Sometimes the greatest victory is simply showing up, holding a hand, and promising never to forget. That's what Muhammad Ali learned from Tommy. The champion who floated like a butterfly and stung like a bee discovered something more powerful than any punch: the healing power of human connection. Tommy taught him that true greatness lives forever in the hearts we touch.